Hello people, and today in sequence of me posting a video on the healer POV, today I'm going to teach you how to unprofessionally be a healer in M7 or F7. I will cover both. So the first thing, I'm going to divide this up into multiple different sections, is first of all the gear that you'll be using, and then clearing and going through the instances and the rooms and all this stuff, and then once you actually get to the boss phases. So first step, or the first part, is we're going to be going through the gear that you need. So for armor, you need 2/4 Nekron, or if you're high enough level, Skeleton Master chestplate. That's dropped through M7. This is very viable because with the ability list right there, it says increase arrow damage by 5%, and you don't consume arrows. This is actually very useful since you're not downtiming for any sort of reason to get arrows or refill your quiver and all that. And then you want Nekron leggings, and then for the boots, you want Maxor boots. Again, these are both gonna be Legion 5 perfect gemstones because this is very viable because people are very strict about it. I don't have my armor 5-starred, but 5-starred is very crucial, especially once you get to higher floors and get to higher cata level. It's very good. And then you want either gold or diamond Nekron head. And I have my gold head right here. I don't have this 2 hypermax, like I only have Legion 1 because, fun little fact, I'm actually really close to getting my diamond Nekron head. But a cheap alternative, or a different alternative, is using a spirit mask instead, which I've seen people do this. 30 Virus did this for his Iron Man playthrough. I've seen people use a spirit mask, but dungeon heads are very useful because whatever floor you're playing is, you get 2 times the stats on that respective floor. So it's very nice to have, especially in M7, because this is your defense, this is your health, this is your crit chance, crit damage, all this other stuff. It's very nice. Alright, for the weapon of choice, we're going to have Spiritual Terminator with Soul Eater. It's the best thing. We don't need to get into Duplex or Fatal Temple quite yet, because healer class, you don't need to go, you need to be up there, and you don't need to do anything like too over the line. Right, then AOTV with Ether Warp. This is crucial because this is what gets you around doing your secrets. Dungeon Breaker. This has been the best pickaxe since release. Yes, there is a bunch of other controversial updates alongside of it, but Dungeon Breaker, this is a must-have. It's 500 with Essence, so it's not bad. Gyrokinetic Wand, this is another very useful tool that I have, especially with some rooms where I could just gyro and, like, mini bosses, collections of, or groups of mobs. This is very nice to use, especially paired with the Terminator. I do use a Hyperion in my hand. Another alternative for this is just a Hyperion is, it's very crucial, especially for healing. You can also use an Estrella and then have a Amethyst on the combat stone slot, but I use a Hyperion because I do use this outside of dungeons as well, and it's very crucial. Alright, you're going to want some Ender Pearls. This is good for cheesing secrets and secret routes. Infinite Leap, this is a little bit of a, it's not a requirement, but it's more something like, it's very useful to have, just in case like you run out of Spirit Leaps. Infinite Leap is just always there, it never runs out, obviously, as well as Infinite Boom. So my hotbar layout right here, this is all I have for clearing, and then more of the crucial stuff for boss phase. When I have a last breath with some level of duplex on it, this is for your debuff phase, and I will disclose on how to do this later. Next we have Soul Sand or Chess. This is also for pre-debbing, which is actually very useful, or this is actually the most important part of pre-debbing for healers. Next, we have a cherry machine gun. This is for routing, and it's, again, very useful. I don't do any runs with that where I'm not using my cherry machine gun. Ice spray. I actually used to use this all a lot before, like, I implemented ender pearls into my inventory. Ice spray was always something I used for mini bosses and all that, even before I got gyro. But I only strictly use this for P5, which is Dragon's Phase. But it really just depends on how you want to use it. If you can use this during the run, great for you. I just personally don't. Next, we have a dirty soul whip with Swarm 5, or you could even use a flaming flame, either or. But the flaming flame, it does require fishing 47, I believe, but it's really high up there. I haven't gotten there personally, but soul whip, and you want to make sure they have dirty and lethality on this, because this is what actually kind of gets rid of the defense in the dragons. You want to have a fishing rod of choice. This is for pet swapping, and I will get into what the pet rules are. And then a bonzo staff, obviously, because this is what you kind of transport around quicker, because you can't teleport in M7 boss phase. Another key thing to have is a bonzo mask. This is actually very useful, especially since we're going over mechanics such as early entry 3, and this is something that I would highly recommend. And then the stuff over here isn't necessarily too crazy. I just have an egg locator just in case it's hoppity and I'm just waiting for parties, and then I can collect eggs. Hurricane bottles, these are very good because this is like a sort of flip method to use. And then obviously Abaphone. Now for pets, I pretty much have all the pets up here that you will need. So pets that you'll need are Black Cat. It doesn't necessarily have to be mythic, but I just have it mythic just for all that. A Golden Dragon. This is the best damage pet for dungeons. It's very useful. You're gonna want to have a Phoenix pet, either one or two of them, depending on how early or how late you go in for early entry. I have seen people run 2 Phoenix pets, but I run 1 personally. Epic or legendary works. I have epic. And then finally, you're gonna want a jellyfish pet. This is actually very important. You want a legendary jellyfish pet for the powerful potions ability in the bottom, because it increases the effectiveness of your dungeon pots by 50%. And then another pet to have just in case, because it is M7, you're going to have some inconsistencies. A spirit pet is very nice because it reduces the first death by 1 point, which I don't understand. Like, if you don't have a spirit pet, why? Or if you're doing M7, you wouldn't have a spirit pet, but alright. Now for the pet rules. So the first one is when you enter a dungeon, you're going to want to have your jellyfish pet equipped. So this is when you first enter the dungeon and you're in the room with Mort, the starting room, and when everyone does their dungeon pods, this counts as when you technically enter the dungeon, not when you start the instance. So starting the instance right here is when you begin either Master Mode floor 7, Golden Dragon, obviously this is your clear pet, and then for floor 7, depending on what kata level you are, you can use a black cat to clear. I would highly recommend this once you're kata 40. Or high 30s, kata 40 at most, to start using black cat for floor 7, not Master Mode 7. You still want to use Golden Dragon for Master Mode floor 7. And then once Nekron spawns, because you are healer, you're going to be pre-debuffing, so you need to get some speed. So once Nekron spawns, you want to summon your Black Cat pet. And this, if you're just strictly running F7, you could just have this and not have when Nekron spawns, because you're already going to have your Black Cat equipped when clearing an F7 for this. But for M7, if you are doing M7, just whenever Nekron spawns, or whenever you begin Master Mode Floor 7, or yeah, so if you're doing M7, you're going to want to have this. If you're doing Floor 7, you don't necessarily have to have this. Alright. Now, for the fishing rod that was mentioned earlier, when you throw a fishing hook, you want to equip your Black Cat and add a exception if you have your Black Cat equipped. And then you want to, if you throw a fishing hook, you want to equip your Phoenix Pet if you have a Phoenix Pet equipped, but also if you have your Golden Dragon Pet equipped. So the importance of this is basically when you're starting to early entry, and this was back when I didn't use Black Cat to pre-dev, and I was getting slow turns, and I was like very inconsistent with my routing. I had this on, and it swaps to a Phoenix Pet when I throw a fishing hook, because I already have my Black Cat equipped. And then once you start your early entry 3 process, you want to throw a fishing hook. This equips your Phoenix Pet, and you get the invulnerability. Alright, so that's the gear, and now let's get on to the actual clearing and what to do in the dungeon. Alright, so next thing, once we have our gear down, you need to know how to actually clear the dungeon. So specifically for healer, you're not meant to do anything crazy like Archer and Mage, who have Blood Rush. Once you get to more sweatier parties, I have seen some POVs where healer does Blood Rush, and then Mage just blood camps, blah blah blah. But your main goal as an Archer, especially for clearing, is to just clear as many rooms and do as many secrets as you can. For this specific VOD, it was actually kind of shitty because I had Quiz and Mines right next to each other, and those are really just not too friendly things. But one tip I was actually told by one of my friends is before you enter a room, like an uncleared room, if it's full of mobs, just use your hype and then walk in, because you're going to have your absorption health and you're going to sort of tank a little bit, especially with the Estrella. You're going to have more defense for a short amount of time. It's only for 4 seconds, but that's plenty of time to get through. And then for secrets, one thing I will recommend to anyone, especially if like it's kind of a tedious process to learn, but secret routes and secret waypoints, have those all set up, have those all memorized. It's very crucial. And like tips I would have is using mods, like specifically Odin and kind of the secret overlay that you're seeing, that's Devonian. Use those to your advantage, as well as looking into secret routes posted by community, especially like Flame of War. That is one person I will highly recommend of who I use my secret routes from. But secret routes, it's just a learning process, but they really do help your runs. And then roughly at about between 270 and 290 score, I swap over to my stuff I would need to pre-dev. So my Jerry Sheen Gun, my Soul Sand or Chest, whatever you're using, and my Bonzo Staff. And I just kind of supplement my hype as a teleportation, as you can see here. But this is just so like I'm not like stopping for like a second or two once you enter boss. And then we're on to pre-deving. So for pre-deving, there's actually 2 separate routes that I can use. That I use one that I use, but there's 2 that I can recommend that you guys start out with. So the first one that I'm showing is where you go under left and you go to the 4th instance of Goldor phase, and you cut through the gateway, the golden doors, and you kind of just mine through the blocks I'm showing here, and you just end up at the levers device. And so you flip those, and then you go to the arrows align, and it's it's a very easy route to learn, and it's the one that I started out with, especially since the dungeon breaker change, going from 2 to 3. Now, the other method that I use, the one that you'll see that I showed in the video that I posted, is actually going from 3 to 2. And this is done by going in between yellow and green and heading over to the obsidian wall and mining out a 1x2 tunnel up until you reach dirt blocks and just mining straight down. And you immediately drop into the third instance of Goldor, and you end up at Arrows Align, and then you can do Arrows Align and then route yourself back to Levers Terminal, and then you just teleport back to Archer. Now, for Storm Phase, there's 2 different sort of setups. You have GY, or green-yellow, or PY, purple-yellow. Now, if your party does agree upon GY, which is most common in M7, your job as a healer is to pad on green. And what that means is you're basically controlling the pillar and you're crushing Storm during this phase. Only for the green pad though, because tank has yellow pad. Now, once you're on green pad, you're going to have some Skeletors sort of spawn in, but that's no biggie, just clear them out. And then it's Mage that is sort of aggroing Storm, and as soon as you see Storm pop up in your render distance, you want to step on the pad immediately. And then I like to wait just a little bit before I actually know, like, okay, Storm has been crushed for the first half. And what you're supposed to do is you leap to Berserker. But you also have some instances where Berserker's also too deep into I4, which is a burrs thing. I'm not too educated on burrs. All I know is I4, which is you skip the arrows device in I4, instance 4 of Goldor. And before Berserker gets set up, healer is actually supposed to leap to Berserker and then get up and then kind of route over to Simon Says. And I didn't do this specifically for this run because the Berserker was too deep and I was kind of like the anxiety of sort of one, dying as soon as Goldor spawns in, and 2, not making it in time for my teammates to leap to me, because everyone else, once Storm is done, they are supposed to leap to healer and then kind of get set up with terminals. And then next thing we're working on is Goldor. So for Goldor's phase, you're starting off with Simon Says device. Now, the one piece of tech that we're working with is SS skipping. Now, SS skipping, or Simon Says skipping, it's kind of complex, but it's very simple to achieve. So what you do initially is once the terminal starts, you click the start button twice, super fast. And then you click it once, maybe a second later. Now this bugs the game, and it skips, and I put this in quotes, it skips the first 2 phases, and it moves you on to the third buttons, where you're supposed to click them in order. Now what you do instead is, for the third buttons, you actually don't click the first button that it shows. You're supposed to click the second and third in the simple 1, 2, 3 order. You skip 1 and you just do 2, 3 order. You're supposed to left click them and punch the buttons, and this updates the game, and you basically skip to your regular 1, 2, 3 sequence of Simon Says, where you can now then right click. And then once you get that all done, your next assignment is to leap to Archer, and then with your pre-dev, you can actually just punch a lever or punch a lantern and your device is completed. And then you're supposed to get top lever and then boom, or super boom or infinity boom the gate. Now Archer can also do this, but I just like to infinity boom just to make sure that I'm playing it safe. And then I go to the top left blocks that I stand on, and I swap to my fishing rod, and I put my Bonzo mask on. So what I do is, while holding my fishing rod and I have these blocks mined out, I wait for either 5 out of 8 or 6 out of 8 for turns, and it really just depends on the speed of your party. So once you do that, you run through, and you go down to this route where it's right below terminal number 3. You wait for your Bonzo mask to proc. Then you swap to Phoenix. And then because you have your Spirit mask, it's sort of just as a failsafe. If, like, Melody's really slow, you're at 7 out of 8, you can swap to your Spirit mask and then just wait for a little bit extra longer. But if that doesn't work out, you can always just leap back to Archer. And because if you don't leap back to Archer, you will die and you'll lose dungeon score and blah, blah, blah. But once early entry 3 is successful and everyone is starting instance 3, your goal is to sort of go above you and do term 3, because meta has changed where healer actually is supposed to do term 3 instead of it's either mage or archer. I forget personally. And then you're supposed to align your final arrow in to device, and then once that's all done, once all the terms and devices are done, you leap to mage and you do terminal 4, which is over here on the platform. It's right below arrows device. You do that and you're supposed to get levers, and then I leap back to mage, and then once Goldor is aggroed and then they're fighting aggro, you're supposed to dig down. Alright, so I'm down at Nekron's phase. Don't mind this guy right here. While it's worth the mention, like when you get down to the start of Nekron's phase, it's actually the transition from Goldor's phase to Nekron's phase. When you dig down specifically at this message where it says you've destroyed the factory, you want to go down and destroy this 3x3 of blocks. Basically, if you want to like set up waypoints for it, which have really helped me, you want to go to the edge and find this L-shaped pattern of chiseled stone bricks, and you want to count a gap of 2 from this middle one to the left, and you place a marker. So you have your 1, 2, and on the third block, you place it down. You go 1 out from each, and then connect it in this 3x3 pattern. And what this does is basically, in a normal phase, Nekron will just normally break this entire platform, and you would have to like jump down here and then Bonzo over here and then Bonzo here and all that stuff. And that's not necessarily the best, especially when it comes to efficiency. So with the Dungeon Breaker update, you break these 4 blocks, this whole platform actually kind of bugs out and it stays. And then what you can do is just simply leap over here, and it's much more quicker. So then, once you dig down to P5 at the start of Nekron's phase, this is usually my time where I get set up, I switch my Soul Whip, I switch my Fine Breath, and then I have a keybind to through the key commands mod on Modrinth, is I grab my arrow poison, and I typically grab another dungeon pot, and I just wait for everyone up here to do Nekron's phase, and once that's done and everyone's leaped to me, you immediately turn around, you grab the relic that's here, and typically you can just run back and place it here, but I like leaping to Archer, because Archer's red, and then they have to go to this route, and then I could just leap here, and then you go to middle, and then you replace your Bonzo staff with, or I replace my Bonzo staff with my Ice Spray wand, and this really just depends on what your keybinds are. So then, for Dragon's phase, what you want to do is So your party is tank, mage, and you, the healer. And the other two, the birds and the arch team, they just go for whatever other dragon. So mage team, what they do is for debuffing, you want to go up to any one of these dragon sort of statues, and what you do is you just kind of stand about underneath it where it's like the middle of this area, and you just look, or you just go to the horn that's on your right, you aim there, and you draw back on 1 while your timer's going down, and you just shoot arrows. Once the dragon spawns, you immediately swap to your ice spray, and you ice spray the dragon to debuff it more, and then you just soul whip it up until it's done. And that's how you split dragons. One thing that's also worth mentioning is actually utilizing your mods effectively when it comes to dungeons. So for example, one of the 1.21 mods that I use, Onion, is they actually have key slots. Odin also has this, Odin mod specifically, but I will do a mods config later if requested, which I could just easily swap to whatever I need to and all that, and then once I'm done, I just swap back to everything, which is very useful if you have any sort of features in mods where it's keybinds or like for even Odin, like terminals and everything. It's very nice to just have these quality of life assets and just use them to your ability, and also doing research on what the mod does and like reading the descriptions is really helpful as well. The key thing I could always say is work on splits effectively. Not specifically dragon splits, but even clearing. You don't want a room stack. I've seen a lot of people room stacking, especially in floor 7. That is not what you're supposed to do. You're just wasting time. Another piece of advice is also building connections with people that you make parties with, especially since like, hey, oh, we don't have a mage in this party. I could just invite one of my friends and all this other stuff. It is so useful. It is so helpful. I've seen so many people do this. I even have my own friends that play master mode all the time, and we just fill and all that other stuff. That is the unofficial guide on how to healer in floor 7/M7.